an attitude of we need energy as fast as possible, and then at the same time suppressing wind is illogical. It doesn't make sense. It's at a minimum, that's a misconception. There are a few. I'll stop there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And when you look ahead to the next 5 to 10 years, where do you believe the data center and power infrastructure landscape will be? What will it look like?
Well, you can't create a data center anywhere if you don't have power, and connecting to the grid today, depending on where you are, is anywhere from 3.5 to 7 years, depending on ISO, system operator or utility area. So co-locating with a power plant is the solution, and the data centers have advocated for that early on in the current administration, and they have managed to receive an executive order that pushes that, so that's good. You have, because you're going off-grid in many parts, there are new technologies on the horizon, which I don't want to talk about in detail now, but we are going to employ a few over time. And side note, in my over 2 decades of designing power plants, I've always pushed the envelope on technology and educated the general contractors on what they can do that they didn't think of. So looking ahead, I would say power will continue to be a key element that the data centers need, and the power plants will be more complicated as they are not just one single technology. There are some investors that see that as a risk because you're adding multiple risk on top of each other because you have different technologies. But the alternatives don't look that clean. It's a trade-off of risks. So I believe that we will at some point have more nuclear in the mix. And currently what we're already seeing is a consolidation to large players that are already established. So the corporates are squeezing out the little guys. Those are a couple of the trends that I'm seeing, and this is normal for any industry.
Got it. And how do you find opportunities for power projects before the rest of the market does?
Well, there's a bit of a secret sauce in there. What can I talk about? Well, you have to analyze your clients and your the location where you plan to locate. So site selection is key. Building in a place where the land is the cheapest may not necessarily be the best solution. You have to look at the broad scope of what your client's needs are and what the local conditions are. And if you look at the current pipeline of projects and the predictions of what percentage of those will fail, it is the majority actually of projects, typically in project development, do fail, and they often fail for reasons I actually mentioned already here, and one of them is the NIMBYism. But there are some other constraints that cause them to fail. So rather than finding opportunities before others do, there's a rigorous due diligence that we as a developer and we as a fund have to do before we even invest the first dollar. And then when you continue your due diligence, you tie down the project or the land or the or the rights to buy the project for a small period of time and do more due diligence there. It's a race right now, and those who think that they can afford it sometimes pepper a large area with potential projects, and just like in venture capital, assume that many of them will die, and hope that the few that do survive make up for the loss. So I don't think that the question does justice to the situation. It's not a race to find attractive data centers before others do, but do your due diligence, because everybody else is going to find them at the same time, and then do your due diligence quickly. That requires background knowledge. Personally, I have 20 years of hands-on knowledge, and I've been in this industry for 30 years, so I know a few things about this industry. And that you can find, that reflects in design, quality control, site selection, project evaluation, due diligence. And if it's a project that hasn't been built yet, I have control over quality, timelines, and understand what to look out for when investing into a project.
Got it. And what are the first three things that you look at when an opportunity to invest in a project comes across your desk?
Depends on what you call the opportunity. So if it's a greenfield development where I will personally get involved in the site selection, and I look at the distance to infrastructure and the indicators that give me an idea of how long this will take. How likely is it that we get blindsided by NIMBYs or other regulations, for example. You've seen some areas where, because of local resistance, laws have been put up on a short notice or regulations were put up where there was a moratorium on new data centers implemented in a few counties. And when you look at a existing opportunity, so if somebody has pre-developed a site and doesn't have the wherewithal to build it, but wants to sell it off at the pre-development stage, maybe at RTB or RTB or ready to build, then you look at things like, okay, what are the contracts that are already in place? And very often you'll find claims that, we have a power purchase agreement, and then you dig deeper and you find, well, that's just a preliminary, that's an MOU, which is valuable, but it doesn't guarantee that there will be an off-taker. Things like that. Site control is another one where some developers may say, well, I have talked to a landowner, so I know a landowner, he's going to sell that to me. Okay, do you have a contract? Those are some of the things that you look at.
Got it. And how do you determine whether a project is truly viable versus just being viable on paper?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? So on the internet connection timeline, sometimes there are assumptions. Yeah, we can interconnect in 3 years because that's the standard in the industry right now for this location. Okay, let's check out what the pipeline is, or the number of projects that this utility company is currently evaluating. How long does it take them to evaluate the grid capacity? Sometimes it takes them a pretty long time. How much does it cost? Is that paid? Things like that. So regulatory timelines are often underestimated, how long it takes. One factor is the industry is poaching from AHJs. AHJ stands for Authorities Having Jurisdiction, and from national labs or from counties. The industry needs people that have knowledge. And if you go into Let's say you're talking to a utility company, and they're losing their hardware engineers, their high voltage engineers left and right. That's an indication that maybe there will be a little bit of a delay on the interconnection because they just can't handle the requests.
Got it. And
Another one is financial model. So if you have a good financial model, you can model the downside risk. And we have a fantastic financial modeler on the team. And you can model the downside risk. And if you have two projects that on the surface look the same or of equal risk based on permitting, et cetera, and then the financial model shows you that one of them has a much bigger downside risk, then, well, that can be a deciding factor.
got it. And what are some of the reasons that projects like this fail? I know you mentioned NIMBY. Are there any others as well?
Yeah. So as I just mentioned, interconnection might take too long. Technology risks. Let's say you bet on a technology that takes longer to develop than you thought. Each year is very expensive, and the data center clients want to see that you stand behind the timelines you give them.
Got it. And how important is access to reliable power compared to, some other variables like land, fiber, customers? I know you mentioned it's important for the interconnection. Do you view it as the most important piece of the project, or how
If
do
you
you
had
think about that?
if you had asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have said, yeah, interconnection is probably your key item here, because without interconnection, where are you going to get your power from? But now with the regulation changes and off-grid becoming a bit of a fashion, it's become having power is the key. Whether you have grid connection or not is a I wouldn't say secondary. It's still important, but it has moved down in importance. When that grid connection comes, you can supply power for longer. One of the things to note is that many data centers, especially the hyperscalers, they don't grow. They don't build out the full capacity in 1 year. They may build out over time, and that gives you some flexibility as well. When you're looking at fiber, for example, data connections are faster to install than and cheaper on a per mile basis than, for example, a 300 kV power line or 345 kV power line. So it's having an interview with the client is probably a good idea. Let's put it that way.
For
Did I
sure.
answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. And what role does the grid infrastructure play in determining the long-term viability of the project?
So with grid connection, you're always better off. It's good to have a grid connection, whether that comes in year 3 or 5. Does have an impact, but it's not a showstopper. So yeah, if you can get grid connection, it's still important, and it does save money. Think of your own solar system at home. If you are grid connected, you use the grid as a buffer or a storage facility. If you are out in the wilderness and you're reliant on your generator and your solar power, you probably want to have a bigger generator, or you have some batteries to operate off-grid reliably.
Got it. And what separates a world-class project developer from just an average one?
Knowledge. Experience